Welcome to Retire to a Life You Love with Michelle Gessner from Gessner Wealth Strategies. We inspire executives, professionals, and business-savvy women to better their finances and overcome the financial stresses of life. We do all of this by giving the advice you need to identify your goals and the confidence to achieve them, so you can retire to a life you love. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to win financially as Michelle draws from years of expertise and talks with today's top business minds about their wins, failures, and best practices.
Hello and welcome to Retire to a Life You Love podcast with your host, Michelle Gessner. I'm Wendy McConnell. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, Wendy. I'm doing well. I sound like I have a little frog in my throat, but I am doing a lot better. I did have a cold last week, and it's still kind of the remnants, but I'm good.
You feel good?
I feel great.
Okay. Well, that's the most important thing. So I'm glad to hear that. What do we have coming up today?
So today we have invited back a guest who was on one of our previous episodes last year, episode 4. We had Joanne Giardini, and we have her back today. I'm so excited to reintroduce her. Joanne Giardini Russell is the owner of Giardini Medicare, which is an independent agency that provides Medicare products to the public. She helps people with the transition to Medicare. We all know how confusing Medicare can be. So her firm is right there to help people assess all the questions, get transitioned from the workplace to Medicare, get enrolled in the right products, and just answer all the many questions. So we are very excited. Joanne, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's funny to think of Medicare as exciting, but there's a lot to it. There is a lot to it. So we give it that for sure.
So, okay, well, let's kind of start where we left off, I think, in the previous episode, which again, listeners, if you would like to go back and reference the first one where Joanne was talking about Medicare, it is episode 4. So let's start with how far ahead should people prepare for the Medicare conversation?
That it's a great question, and it's timely because today on TikTok, I do a lot of teaching on TikTok, and someone sent me a message saying, I'm 7 or 8 years away from Medicare. How do I hire you? It's just like,
A little far.
This is way too far, way too far. I said, here's my tip. Just at that point, and some of you listening are going to think that person is totally normal. I get that, right? You're going to think that that's spot on. But if you're 5 to 10 years out, I don't want to say completely ignore it because I know your personality is you can't, but back burner, right? Go to YouTube. We have a course, gmedcourse.com, COURSE. That's a great place. I told this person, just dive into the course, listen to TikTok, put your head up a little bit, but don't drive yourself crazy because you will drive yourself crazy and the universe will not be the same place in 7 or 8 years. So relax. If you're 6 months out, that's the sweet spot. The sweet spot is really, to me, 6 months out, pop your head up. And I don't care if you're going to do Medicare or you don't know if you need to do Medicare or you're absolutely doing Medicare, whatever your situation is, it doesn't matter. But because at 6 months, you need to pop up, find that agent connection, which is really, really important in our world, to guide you through. And I'm telling you, that to me is the most, if I could leave you with one thing today, that is the most important thing in Medicare. Find out if you need it. If you do need it, find out what steps A, B, C are going to be, and find your connector that's going to bring you to Medicare. You know, like our agency, that's what we do. We kind of connect people to the system. We walk them through. We get you there if they need to get there. But so many people make the mistake of, boom, they just sign up for Medicare because someone told them they had to. And they find out 4 years later they didn't have to do anything, right? And they wasted money. They wasted all sorts of things. So it just depends on your timing. But that critical 6 months before is your most critical piece to really start asking a professional, hey, here's my situation. What do I have to be doing? We diagnose that all day long. And that could be a simple email. That does not need to be a structured 30-minute phone call. Literally can just be an email. You know, hey, I'm contributing to an HSA. My wife is 52, blah, blah, blah. Boom, boom, boom. Just do A, B, and C.
So
that's how easy it can be.
Yeah. And people can make it as easy or difficult as they want, right?
Yes,
And if they
absolutely.
don't have the right person that they're talking to, or they don't know how to find the right person, it can be difficult.
Yes.
But you said something just now that you may not need to be on Medicare. I know that there's a lot of confusion about that. So if you get Part B when it's not really necessary, you can cause yourself some problems. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. What happens is they rush off to get Part B, and Part B is the portion of Medicare that's your medical component that you do have to pay for. The base rate in 2024 is $174.70. The top rate, $594. So think of that doctor, and I think of a doctor I met about 10 years ago. He got Part B, and he worked at the hospital system, a large hospital system, thousands of employees. He had the family that he needed to have coverage for, so his spouse, kids. He didn't need Medicare Part B at all. He was a high income earner, so he was hitting that high bracket for 10 years of Medicare coverage. I'm like, well, why did you do it back then? He goes, because HR told me I had to. That's how simple his entree to Medicare was.
Those rates that you're talking about, is that per month?
Per month, per person, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So he was spending $400 or $500 because he was a higher income doctor. He absolutely did not need to do that. And he's 50 to 70,000, whatever your delta is over those years. That's ridiculous. And then once they get to us as agents, this is where it gets confusing. We get into something called guarantee issue, which I'm not going to get into a lot of details, but from the agent perspective is now you've got somebody that can't pass medical underwriting. They have to get a certain policy. They want a certain policy. They can't get it because of the rules, all because they started their Part B way too long ago. That was just it. If it's outside of a 6-month window of starting your Part B, all the rules change on our end. And the consumer just doesn't understand why. And it really doesn't make sense. It's just because you did this, you can't do this, you can't have that, you can't match your spouse. It just causes a whole lot of problems, along with just extra money. There's just rarely is there a reason to go get your Medicare Part B and stay on employer coverage, for example. And that's what you see people doing far too often.
So they think they need to have both?
Because the media or a friend told them they had to do something, and that's why they just do it. Like, think about it logically. If you have employer coverage, the government, I know we have our issues, but they're really not going to make you get coverage that you don't need, right? If you have coverage at work and you can prove that, they're not going to make you get it. Now, remember, the rules are different. If it's a 20 employee group or under, that is different. They are going to make you get Medicare. So it does get confusing. And that's what I'm not saying. It's not confusing, but in general, there's just too many people that are just apt to run off and just go sign up because it's more my friend told me I had to, or my sibling told me I had to.
Or
And
in the case
it's
you
that game of
gave,
telephone.
well, I was
HR told me I had to.
I know. That's what I got hung up on that. HR
Oh,
told me.
yeah.
So you would think that your HR department has a
Right.
little bit of expertise. Is that a mistake too?
It's a mistake. It is a mistake. We kind of actually come in and we do webinars now for HR for companies I think every single company should be bringing that in-house. We just had a case the other day where this guy is so paranoid because HR told them he had to take Medicare at 65 years old and he had to stop his HSA contribution, even though he's still working for another few years. Not true. Absolutely not true. So he's mad at HR. And again, think of how he feels. He heard it from HR. Friends and family are more apt to say, oh, you got to do something at 65, of course. And then he gets to us and we're like, why'd you do that? You didn't have to. And he's mad because he wants to keep putting money in the HSA and he doesn't believe us. And why would he? Right? Because he's heard it from HR because HR told him. And we just send the documents, literal documents from CMS. Here you go. And you don't have to believe us, but you didn't have to get Part A and your HR is wrong. And HR should bring us in for a webinar. That's how simple it is. But it's crazy. HR is tough. And HR, people have to remember, HR is not Medicare. They don't know Medicare. They are the liaison to the group benefits folks and the Medicare folks, but they're not Medicare people. And they're not group people.
And I can also tell you in my world where I'm reviewing employee benefits, I find that HR doesn't know much about that either. Not like some of the professionals. And so I'm having to,
Absolutely.
that doesn't surprise me at all. Just a caveat to our listeners to make sure you have the right professional guiding you in Medicare and Social Security and insurance and financial matters, because they really don't know all that stuff.
And they can't be expected to. We don't expect them to know everything. I don't know anything about Social Security. I say that all the time. Don't listen
Yeah.
to me. I know nothing. Right. Now,
Right.
Medicare, different story. And then that's just of our area. And that's why with your job, you rely on different professionals too, whether it's estate planning or taxes. I'm sure you're not just doing tax returns and doing estate planning on the side. It's just
Right.
like everyone
Right.
has their role. So it's just funny how people don't really look at Medicare or insurance sometimes like that. They just don't.
And I don't consider myself a Medicare expert, which is why
Mhm.
I ask my clients to speak to folks like you, because I
Right.
want to make sure they get the best, most expert advice and not make a mistake on something that can cost them a lot of money or grief or both.
Both.
So,
Right.
so my next question, there have been a lot of changes with prescription medications, especially this year, taking effect this year. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we just ran a drug plan this morning. Aubrey in our office was, we were walking through one where the gentleman, it was a great example because he takes a couple of insulins, number one, Toujeo and Humalog, I think it was. And in the past, like 3 years ago, those two insulins, people were paying $400 or $500 a month, literally for that insulin. And on this particular plan, it's capped at $35. Every fill is $35 versus hundreds of dollars. So that person has saved a fortune with insulin alone. So insulin, and this was last year too. So the insulin cap was instituted last year. However, people don't understand that they have to be careful with what drug plan they pick. It's not just all drug plans are going to cover all insulins at $35. You have to go into Medicare.gov. You have to be sure that your insulin will be covered by that particular plan. So that's what we do is we isolate which plans as the right one for these two insulins. He also took, Manjaro, people are using it for weight loss and it's not supposed to be in our area. It's if as long as it's prescribed for diabetes, it can be covered. So in this particular case, Manjaro, which is super expensive, he is diabetic. So it probably will be covered because, again, for diabetic use.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a super pricey drug. And his total for the year came in at like $2,800. So in the past, that whole package would have cost $10,000 for him instead of $2,800 or whatever it is because of the Inflation Reduction Act. So it is capping prescription medications this year at approximately $3,300. His was under that $3,300 at about $2,800. So I hate to say looking at $2,800, that's a deal, but it's a deal compared to years past, right?
Well, it's
Next
a
year,
deal compared to $10,000.
That's what I mean. So he was paying 10 grand
Right.
last year, literally, and overnight into January, boom, you're at 2,800. So it's huge. And next year, that cap, instead of 3,300, will be reduced to $2,000. So it's really having a lot of impact for those people that were paying $10,000 and $12,000 that are on a super expensive cancer drug, things like that. Insulins, every year people don't understand this, and I don't know how we can make it clearer, but your plans change every single year. A drug plan runs calendar year, January 1 till December 31st. People cannot get through their head, no matter how many notices. It's amazing how people just don't understand this. Even our own customers are like, well, wait, my premium's zero. What happened? Well, it's a new year. Everything changes with your drug plan. So many people, unfortunately, just don't pay attention. If there's another thing to leave people with is like, if you have a standalone prescription drug plan, please commit 20 whole minutes a year, every October and November, 20 minutes a year, and you might save yourself thousands and thousands of dollars. You'd be shocked. And people just refuse to do it. It's really kind of a weird thing with Medicare. But if you're not paying
people are
attention,
afraid. I think that, we are so conditioned to think that it's so confusing and that we think it's not going to take 20 minutes, it's going to take 2 hours.
yeah, we have a tutorial. It's 4 minutes long and it walks. I mean, you can pause and work on your computer. You can have your grandkids come in and do it. You can have anybody that is proficient with a computer. It's Medicare.gov. It is actually a really good, easy tool. And again, my son walks us through. Stop. Okay, do this. Stop. Do this. Stop. And you're only inputting your medications, your zip code, your preferred pharmacies. That's it. And the computer spits out the result and says, go sign up for that plan.
Okay.
That's
and
it.
this is a
all we do.
Medicare prescription plan that you're talking about.
I'm talking about standalone prescription drug plans. Yep.
Gotcha.
Standalone Part D plans. Yes. And that's the best way to find them. You let the computer talk to you. Too many people get hung up on, oh, this one doesn't have a deductible. Oh, this one has a zero premium. Oh, this one has. No, just let the computer tell you what you need to do. And that's what people can't also, Wendy, they can't do that. They can't just trust the computer. They're just like, oh, my friend said this one's better. Someone did that to me yesterday. He's like, well, my friend has this one. I said, okay, do you want to pay $2,800 next year or $900? You tell me. I mean,
My gosh.
Well, that kind of, wraps the whole thing up, right?
yeah.
Well,
we can
and
match
you're-
them if you want. Sure.
I think people forget that your friend has a completely different set of needs, is on different medications. You cannot compare what they're doing versus what you're doing unless you are identical, right?
Correct. But they all do. They're all talking. They're literally talking over cocktails on Friday night about which drug plans they have and which Medicare plans they have. And they're all comparing. And then Monday morning, well, I was talking to my friend Friday and he has this one. He only pays $5 a month. It's like, okay.
It's like recommending
You could pay $1,800 more.
Everybody wants
Yes.
to go to your hairdresser.
Use mine, right? Just have what I have, right? Because it's the best. It is. It's that accolade. It's the weirdest product because of that. And people, when I talk like that, people start laughing because they see it in themselves because they were just out Friday night with, Bob and Kathy talking about it. So it's really funny.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Another reason to use a professional, just so you're not overlooking things that you just don't really understand. So can you talk a little bit about predatory marketing, the extreme marketing that goes on with Medicare, and which makes people afraid to reach out to people like you because they figure you might be one of those folks?
Absolutely. It's so difficult. And I get that. I get why people are afraid to make that connection. That's why I always kind of stress email. Like on TikTok, I'm like, just email me. You can delete it. I can't get to, we're not going to call you. You can delete my emails. But I just saw a letter about an hour ago, which was actually pretty exciting. It was a government focus. So there's a lot of changes sort of going on right now with the finance committee, and they're kind of calling on the carpet a lot of these predatory things that are going on finally. And we just saw a letter that was directed to a large, what we call an FMO, and asking about their business activities, about 3-4 pages, and just literally asking, we want proof of this, we want this, we want this. And it's like, we're here clapping like, oh, yay, maybe they're finally getting their hands slapped. And we know the players in that letter, right? So we're looking at it just like all excited. It just has to stop. It's traditionally your big giant call centers that are backed by private equity that have stockholders to answer to, right? It's sales. It's not what's best for the consumer. It's just a bunch of quotas, and it's really bad. And so these people, when you start talking to 65-year-olds, their phones are blowing up. It's 20 to 40 phone calls a day. I don't care if you go on the do not call list, whatever. It doesn't stop things. They have door knocking things. I show sometimes, we've got a little Google chart, the little red bubble on Google when you find a location on a Google map.
Mm-hmm.
There are tools for agents like us, so we can literally put in our zip code, and then it'll pop up a little bubble, and those are all bubbles of people turning 65 in the next year for us.
Oh, geez.
And when you hover, name, address, phone number pop up. So that's a free tool for agents. So there are so many ways to attack the consumer that it's exhausting. So usually or often the consumer just I'm done. They'll take the next phone call, right? And that's what gets them into trouble. And I will say it's really hard to discern who's giving you all the information, who's not. I was just creating a template for our office, and I literally am writing in there. It's like, hey, you hear a lot of stuff from a lot of people. And how do you know we're right? How do you know we're telling you the right thing? I mean, anyone hanging up the phone is like that HSA with the HR folks. It's like, okay, I don't know who to believe anymore. So we back up a lot of our stuff. So if you look at our videos on YouTube, it is Cameron, my son, he runs our YouTube content and stuff. Everything is backed up with a CMS sheet or a Medicare fact, or you know what I mean? We point to those things. And that was my template. I'm just like, okay, if this situation is you, look at this fact sheet number 1 from CMS. It's 15 pages. Honestly, if people would read those 15 pages or kind of find their situation in the 15 pages, they wouldn't sometimes even need the agent. They wouldn't be questioning because the information's all there.
Right.
So I was telling our team this morning, it's like sometimes our job is just to be the human deciphering the 15 pages for them.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
for some reason, people don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to read, right? They don't want to apply it to their real world. It's just like it's right there,
Joanne,
so it's really funny.
Yeah. Tell people what CMS stands for, because some of our listeners may not know.
Sorry, it's Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and that is Medicare. So when we talk CMS, we're talking Medicare. So these fact sheets are directly by, in fact, one of them, it's my favorite. The title says deciding whether or not to enroll in Part A and Part B at age 65. Whether or not, does that sound like it's mandatory? But everyone tells you it's like, well, my sister said I have to sign up for Medicare. It's like whether or not, and again, it's CMS. But so we try and back everything up that we do, everything. We always, whether it's a video or something, it's like, but it's hard. It is hard to discern who's going to be good or not.
But that's a good
tough.
point that you can tell when the person who's talking to you has evidence-based, claims with real footnoted resources from CMS. So that would be a distinguishing factor right there.
It should be. I was talking to someone the other day that was referred. He's a higher net worth person. And I was just answering a couple questions because he said he was working with an agent. I said, okay, that's fine. I don't need that. So-and-so said to call you. Goodbye. And he's like, no, I have one question. So we started talking and he was working with an agent and he said, well, the agent said that most of his clients took this plan. And I was just like, okay. So maybe the agent sells one plan. Just because most of the clients take one plan, does that mean it's the best for you? That to me was just baffling. And as of this morning, he just signed his applications with us because he was not presented two options. And that's the things we talked about in episode 4 is what is Medicare and Medicare Advantage? He had no idea about the other alternative. Well, if you don't know your two choices, how do you make a best decision? Instead of listening to the agent say, well, most of my clients just take that. Here, sign this. That's ridiculous.
Right.
So that's hard for, again, the client to discern, right? If they're in the office and the guy's just saying, well, everyone just takes this, you just kind of get sucked in and you're signed up. Next thing you know, that's not how you want to really approach your Medicare decision-making for the next 30 years, potentially with this stuff. So it's hard. It's a very challenging, hard industry for the consumer and us.
Sure. And there is a lot to know about whether you should take the Medigap plan or the Medicare Advantage plan. I know that Medicare Advantage plans are heavily advertised on television and they seem to be the cheaper option, but maybe they're not once you delve into all the details, which is what your firm helps people do, correct?
Yeah, and that was this guy's phone. I mean, his question just the other day. He's like, well, I do have a question. He goes, it just seems too good to be true. What am I missing? That's a big, so I know exactly which one he's been presented. He's been presented Medicare Advantage. The guy travels. He can more than afford a Medigap policy. He has a bunch of specialists, has a bunch of medications. It just wasn't a good fit for Medicare Advantage, but he never heard about the options on the other side. So that's what turned him off from working with that advisor. So that's a big thing, but he's just one you catch. If you don't catch people, a lot of times people just get hurt and they have no idea until it's too late and until they're having issues with the plan and things like that. So yeah, that's what we do. So people that don't have retiree coverage or don't have federal insurance or don't have TRICARE, all those things that people have access to, if it's not a consumer like that, then we're working with them to help them figure out what they should do. The other folks, the FEHB, the TRICAREs, those folks, they just graduate to their next plan essentially. So they're not working with agents like us. It's really the people that don't have all of those options that are looking for agents. And if we can't work with somebody in a state, we refer them to agencies across the country that we know that are good, solid agencies that aren't going to hurt them, that are going to do a good job too. So it's pretty straightforward. You kind of know the good apples and the bad apples in our industry too.
Well, you may, but a lot of folks around here.
We do.
Yeah.
Correct. No, we do. You don't. So that's right. So we'll refer to like-minded, like operating kind of places, but it's super challenging for the consumer to know. Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about the trends going forward that our clients can be made aware of?
The biggest trend is truly the Medicare Advantage trend. Last year, the tipping point happened where 50% of people are enrolling into Medicare Advantage plan. And there's a lot of reasons they are. I think they're oversold versus bought, if you will. It's that glitz, it's the advertising, 85% of the advertisements absolutely are Medicare Advantage. It's the call centers, it's the quotas, it's all the things we just kind of talked about. So do people understand? Somebody put some stat up recently on a Facebook group about how many, had enrolled into Medicare Advantage. And I said, of those millions, how many do we really think understand their plan? And I would venture 85% of people do not understand what they got. They really don't. They all call it a supplement. They don't know. So it's a trend for sure. And I'm not saying Medicare Advantage isn't good for some people. It is, but you got to do it right, approach it right, understand it, things like that. So that's a huge trend. The trend with Medigap plans, we've got two primary ones, a Plan G, Plan N. Plan G is still the winner in terms of, what is most purchased. Plan N is kind of up and coming, if you will. I think in 5 years, it'll be the most popular kind of plan. But right now it's the Plan Gs. But the hopeful trend is CMS kind of cracking down on some of the things that make it difficult. The complaints just went off the charts since 2021. They just skyrocketed. So they finally had to do something. So they're finally maybe paying attention. So I hope that's a new trend. I don't know. It's like when you get money involved with the carriers, it's tough to say if it's really going to do anything. But you've got a lot going on there. So another trend is now that we're cracked 12,000 people a day, entering the 65 space. That's huge. And the trend really goes to, I think it's to 2032. The numbers are staggering. So it's just a huge, there's so many people, we can't even handle 1% of the numbers of people that need help. We can't. So if anything, I would love to see a strong industry where everybody's good and helpful, where it doesn't become a whole, the call centers give us a bad rap. The big calls, the bad kind of call centers give agents a bad rap. You get that slimy kind of used car salesman kind of mentality that people have of you, but we're actually professionals that know our stuff, that do a good job and help people.
Yeah, no.
And there's 100,000 out there like us, not just us.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones. And unfortunately, the bad actors ruin it for the good ones. And that's the same in my industry as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you so much, Joanne. I think that was really helpful. Yeah. Wendy, do you have any additional questions for Joanne?
No, I thought the trends that you were talking about were pretty interesting. And I really feel the need to defend the 85% that don't read anything. It's because they've scared us. I said this before, like you get a contract and you're like, I'm not going to read that. It's like 25 pages in legal speak. And this is why people don't even try.
There's
Absolutely.
no doubt. All the more reason you got to find somebody that you're in the hands of, somebody decent and good. And that's tough. That's just challenging.
Yeah. So make sure you find somebody that will read it for you.
That's right. So you understand it.
Sad but true. Right.
So Joanne, how can people get in touch with you?
Best way is you can go to our website, which will be in the show notes, but it is GMedicareTeam.com. I would also encourage just enrolling in the course, because the course I love because you can just go in there and look at the modules that affect you and no one's going to bug you. You just register with an email address. We have never done anything with the email addresses. We don't have time for outbound solicitation. So have at the course and learn. And then you're armed for going to the agent the first time. You can call the number, the note again, the show notes, but 248-871-7756 and get scheduled with us. We have a map on our website, though, that shows the states that we do work in. If it's a state that you pop up, like, Arkansas, our colleague in Missouri is who we typically will refer to. So it'll pop up a form. So we're very electronic. So everything is kind of out there for that stuff. TikTok, YouTube. Those are great ways to learn. Every day we're doing that kind of stuff. So there's no way to escape education when you're looking for stuff. We have every avenue covered. Podcast. In fact, after this, I'm going to record 2 podcast episodes with my son and our podcast. Every 2 weeks, we launch a new episode. And those are pretty darn 20 minutes, but in depth. Today, we're talking HSAs. Today, we're talking IRMA, whatever it is. So there's no way you shouldn't be learning at your own pace with all the information we have out there for you.
Okay. So, Michelle, how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah. And before I tell the listeners, that course that you referred to, Joanne, that's free, right? That doesn't cost anything.
Absolutely. 100% free. 100% free. Good point.
We'll make sure to put the course in our show notes so people can find it. And to answer your question, Wendy, if people need to reach us, they can just go right to our website, GessnerWealthStrategies.com.
Okay. Well, thank you both, ladies. And thank you for listening today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you for listening to Retire to a Life You Love with Michelle Gessner from Gessner Wealth Strategies. We hope you were inspired to take steps to your financial freedom as you learned new techniques and strategies for managing your finances. To learn more about how you can improve your financial landscape, visit our website at www.gessnerwealthstrategies.com. That's GESSNER wealthstrategies.com. Or give Michelle and her team a call at 713-589-6448. And don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes are available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Michelle Gessner or Gessner Wealth Strategies. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.